through Gargery Swamp Care, amongst other things. And so I'll pass this over to David if he wants a microphone.
Guy kicks the goal and he sees himself. I've been told I've got to stand behind this yellow line. Hey, it's restrictions. I don't know how I'm going to do it. They did this to me the other day. I got a microphone at a welcome, and I was a bit lost, but I'm good now. So yeah, I'm David King. I come from Gundungurra country, so I'm off country. So that's why we're doing an acknowledgement. So it's always good to learn our cultural practices. Hey, that if you're on country, like yesterday at Gadumba at the Cultural Centre, we're doing welcomes. Today I'm off country. I was just thinking about this morning, July 2001, so next year will be 20 years, I started pulling weeds. Hey, that's how long ago. Hey, sat down in a paddock and started pulling weeds because we wanted to bring back country. It was down at Horseshoe Falls, and that's where Jess came along and started doing stream watch with us. I'm getting old, eh? Yeah, long time ago, 20 years next year. That's right. We used to get down there, and then the journey continued. I'd never started pulling weeds because I was Aboriginal or because it was an occupation shelter, or it was just I loved country. Hey, and I think that's the desire that brings all of us together, is that we love country. And yeah, later on it did play a little bit to an advantage to have that Aboriginal connection on my mum's side and to be on my home country and to be able to see some of the changes that we've seen. Um, it's been a great journey. Um, I, Before I do my official Aboriginal acknowledgement, I'd like to acknowledge all this Mob from Greater Sydney Landcare Network. I actually got to sit with them for quite a few months this year, and they do a sensational job. You know, if we don't have people sitting in a room giving their time, doing what they do, we don't see change. We don't restore country. When I first started, I sat with Chris Dewhurst, Eric Marnie, Carleen Waldron, they're still around, eh? Soren Mortensen, they're all our bush care officers, hey, and we just sat there and they're still going, they're still looking after country. There's a few people here, we're all looking a bit younger now, aren't we? And we've been doing that for a while as well, and we're still going, and I don't know when I'll stop and if I ever will, you know. And 2011, I got a phone call from one of my aunties, and in Aboriginal culture, your aunties and uncles are the ones that sort of, yeah, keep you in line. Hey, the ones that tell you, just, it's like standing behind this line thing. So I just want to move. I'm Aboriginal, but I got to do that footy thing up there. And my auntie said to me, if you come up to Gargery, which is the gully in Katoomba, which is now an Aboriginal place, and my mum was born, because we struggled to try and work out how to restore country up there. It was just a little bit of a situation where we'd been given back land, and the processes of doing it and how to restore it was quite difficult. And swamp care was how we did it. Making a decision in your local community could make such a difference to your piece of country. Just it was as simple as that and as little as that. And 2011, I moved away from my beloved Hazelbrook. We still live down there, and Bella and I and our family still look after an occupation shelter, not as officially as what we did way back in 2001, but we moved off to Gargery, and we've seen that place change, and we've seen the stories recreated. We've seen people reconnect. We've seen people starting to love what I call native Australia. We've seen the animals start coming back. And then about 3 years ago, where I met a lot of the people from the committee, we hauled ourselves down to Albury because sometimes pulling weeds and drinking tea, you get an award. Hey, I'm still not sure how you do that. They said, oh, you won an award. I went, what, am I good at pulling weeds or something? Or what's this, like a talent I don't know I got? And so we lobbed down to Albury, and so then they said, oh, there's all farmers. I'm thinking, oh, they probably have to wear suits. So I got this red suit. Yeah, I thought, oh, God, not really a farmer, They probably wear black suits. I got a flash red suit. They wear a black shirt and a gold tie. And we won an award, eh? We won this Gargaree Swamp Care, Landcare Australia 2017. We were the state champion for pulling weeds. Pretty random, eh? Still not sure how we won, but it's pretty good. I have a sensational group. We're actually on Gardening Australia this Friday with that Costa fella because we pull weeds and stuff. But when I went to go down there, I remembered years before when we'd won a few other awards for weed pulling. I said to my mum, "Oh, you know, Mum, the Gargaree's winning a few awards," and then she told me that she'd actually won an award first. Apparently, there was a group out of Parramatta of Aboriginal ladies who restored some bush around Parramatta, and they'd already won one. So my mum, as usual, in a humble way, said, "Oh, there's award things, get them all the time." And I found a picture when I researched. There she was at Parramatta winning a Landcare award. So it's sort of in my family, looking after country. Hey, I sort of bought this compost bin up for a reason. It's not the only thing I've got to carry things around in. I just thought today, you know, probably some people in my family would say it's all I carry around as rubbish bins. That's how I started. It was in 1992 or 93 for Clean Up Australia, cleaning up around Fluston Road at Blacktown. And this year we won an award for international volunteers or something for rubbish picking. So you went for picking up rubbish as well. It's a pretty cool journey. I was on some Zoom session like this footy thing. Well, hello. And so, you know, my uncle, when he passed away, left me this artifact. It's a piece of basalt that he used to use to look after country, to get his tucker. And I just sort of wondered, as we meet today, what sort of artifact will we leave? Will we just leave landfill? Will we? I always I use this in my uni talks a lot. What was an Aboriginal rubbish bin? Did we have one? What was our bin night? Well, there wasn't a bin night. Hey, that's right. Was there a bin night? I look at these people and think, wow. I watch these things go out and in a week and think, what will we leave? And I hope we do leave compost bins. I hope that we eventually just look after our soil, look after our earth. And as we bring life through composting, through looking after our soils and our plants, that our animals will return, our pathways will come. And I really hope at the end of this day, as we progress again as Greater Sydney Landcare, that we see that happen, that we start to look at our processes, that we don't leave bins, we leave compost, and we leave stuff that brings life to our earth. As an Aboriginal man, I just want to acknowledge traditional custodians of this land who looked after this land for thousands of years. I want to remember them. I always feel peace and strength in this area. I've been to this little park a lot, and I know a lot of its history, and I know that it was very similar to what we're doing today, a meeting place. So can I put this down for a sec? We always play clapsticks to remember those past and present and to honour them. It is NAIDOC week, and we have the slogan of always was, always will be. So we remember those today. My language, Yarangji, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, David, and we'll be sure to watch you on Gardening Australia on Friday. So I'm just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping. We've got a really packed program, so if we've got a lot of questions, we'll take them into the break. So we will be making sure that we try to keep on time so we can get through it all. I'm going to ask Susie, our COVID officer, to give you a little bit of information about how this event is COVID safe, and then we'll get going.
I probably don't need the microphone. Can you hear me? For the audio. Oh, that's daunting, isn't it? Yeah, so you've all come through and registered, and that's terrific. Got your name tags, Need to stay seated when we're inside. Stay seated when we're inside largely. And of course, eat outside. We can't maintain, so we need to maintain social distance. The hand sanitizer is outside. And thank you very much for coming. Thanks, David, for a terrific welcome.
Thanks, Susie. So our first presentation is from Dr. Kellie Lee, and Kellie Lee is actually joining us via Zoom. Kellie Lee is the Executive Director of Science for Wildlife, and she's been working on koala conservation for about 10 years, and she's going to introduce what she does, so I won't take up more time with that. So if I can hand over to Kellie, who is going to be beamed through here, I believe. Alicia will sort that.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Oh, okay.
Is the audio all right? That sounds more hopeful. You there?
That one, unmute. Okay, cool. Sorry about that.
That's all good.
That's better. We can hear you here now.
Great, that's always good. I won't talk to myself then. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I'm Kellie. So I run Science for Wildlife. It's a not-for-profit organisation that was set up following a model. I actually spent 10 years in Africa, in Zambia, working with large carnivores. And when I came back to Australia, the last thing I really expected to do was to work with koalas. I thought, you know, iconic species, surely everything's been done that needs to be done. But I fell into a job down in Victoria where there's a totally different management problem with koalas. We've actually got too many koalas in some habitats defoliating the trees. I set up a conservation research program down there and came up to the Blue Mountains again, which is where I've kind of lived since I came back from Africa. Those 2013 fires came through here, which actually took out 200 homes in the lower mountains, and a massive state mine fire that went up and burnt 200,000 hectares of Wollemi National Park, which at the time was a big fire. We know differently now. And at that time, lots of koalas popped up out of the fires, essentially, turning up in areas where they hadn't been seen for decades. And until then, nobody really thought they were around. So the video we're going to show now is a little film we've put together on this year that was 2020, which has been fairly devastating for a lot of people, particularly with the fires here and then COVID, the floods in between, all sorts of things have gone on. This film actually showed in the States at an expo recently. But yeah, it's a recap of everything we got up to around the time of the fires, a bit of the story beforehand, and then happy to chat to you guys afterwards about what we're doing now. So I hope you enjoy it.
Just give me a sec and I will bring it up.
That time is still really vivid in my memory. I remember as the fires were coming, breathing really thick smoke and ash as they were approaching the house. I was under the house doing last minute preparations before I evacuated to safety. These fires were something we've never seen before. It was a real slap in the face from climate change that we were seeing here. Apart from being fuel driven, they were also weather driven fires, areas that had been burnt just months before bursting into these fires. We had weather systems created. I remember driving down the highway as I was evacuating my house and seeing 3 fire weather systems in different directions as I left. And we had long droughts and extreme heat driving these fires, and it's pretty terrifying to watch to see such massive areas get consumed by these fires. We had mega fires across this Blue Mountains World Heritage area. We had a huge fire in the north that had been coming for weeks, another big fire in the south. Fortunately, I didn't lose my home. I was one of the lucky people. The firefighters here were amazing. We had 23 fire trucks, 2 helicopters and a big 737 water bomber ready to fight this fire by the time it got close to me. The fires grew across this World Heritage area and was starting to consume all of these areas we love, including the wildlife we love. We've been studying koalas in this area for many years now, and we had
radio tracked a bunch of them. We knew their names, you know, we knew their habits, and it was horrible watching as these fires slowly consumed the areas they were living in. Australia is familiar with fires. They're part of our landscape, but these were fires of a scale and intensity we've never seen before. We were getting horrible stories from the fire grounds. I know to the south of here, people were talking about death fields, where they were walking out, seeing skeletons of dead animals on the ground. When they touched the bones, they just crumbled into ash as if they'd been cremated. To the north of here, we had reports of 70-metre flame heights as this fire approached from the Gospers Mountain fire. That turned out to be a mega fire, several fires joined up, and it's the largest single ignition forest fire in Australia's history. We had a similar massive fire to the south, which was created by about 3 different fires joining up, called the Greenwater Creek Fire. And both of those fires were encroaching towards the centre, one from the north, one from the south, coming towards this ridgeline of human settlements. The Greater Blue Mountains World Heritage Area is 1 million hectares, so about 2.5 million acres in size, made up of 8 different national parks and reserves. And 80% of that was hit by fire. It's a magical wilderness area, and these fires were really personal. Apart from the fact that we live here and we love the place, we've been studying koalas in this region for 6 years now, and it's a really special area. Nobody really thought that they existed here in big numbers. It's sandstone country, and koalas are pretty famous for liking good soil types, so they often live around people because we also like those good soil types to grow food and to grow our gardens in. So often they're under threats from development, whereas we've got this massive protected area where koalas weren't thought to exist, but for us we find this real story of hope with koalas. We were finding them in areas nobody thought they lived, using tree species that nobody thought they could use. And we've just discovered basically they're a bunch of rule-breaking koalas. They haven't read the literature on how koalas are supposed to behave. One of the theories is a climate envelope where koalas are supposed to occur 800 metres and below. We found them at 1100 metres altitude up in Cattai National Park where it snows in winter. So a few months before those fires hit, these koalas were sitting in snow. The other thing that makes these koalas really unique, and in fact nationally significant, is we did a big collaborative study looking at the genomics of koalas right across the species range. We tested koalas from South Australia right up north to far north Queensland, and the most genetically diverse population in the country is the Blue Mountains koalas. So we have a really amazing story of hope here. We've got koalas inside a protected area where they're not facing development threats, so loss of habitat, domestic dogs and vehicle strikes are all common threats to koalas. We had koalas inside a national park system, protected from those sorts of threats, highly diverse, and we even found a koala population that was free of chlamydia, which is a disease that hits koala populations significantly in a lot of areas of Australia. It will kill koalas. It's a fairly common disease and it affects them at different levels. Some will survive, but it basically can lead to population decline. And we found this population up in the snowline that was disease-free as well as genetically diverse and safe from development threats. So a fairly unique story of hope. Koalas are listed as a threatened species in Australia. After these fires, people are actually trying to get them listed as an endangered species. In New South Wales alone, we lost about 30% of koala habitats during these fires. We couldn't get into most areas. It's really remote, rugged, steep country out here, and everybody felt really helpless. So constantly we were watching these fires near me out, thinking, what can we do? One of the key problems here was that at that time we had 100 fires burning across the state or more, and so all of the resources we had to go to protecting human life and property. Therefore, nothing was available to protect wildlife. So the fires that started inside the national park system had to be left to burn because they were too remote and hard to put out. So those fires grew and then dried up and made these massive mega fires. And so out of that came this desperation to try and do something. And I floated what I thought was a bit of a crazy idea at the time. No one had done it. Normally you can't pull out healthy animals from the wild without a lot of due process. You have to get permits and scientific licenses and all sorts of things to consider something like that. But in these circumstances, everybody in the National Parks and Wildlife Service was watching everything burn as well and feeling helpless. And so I floated this idea, can we go in front of one of these fires and try and pull some of these koalas out? And to my surprise, nobody said no. Everybody said, let me get back to you, I'll just talk to someone else. And in the end, we got support from the National Parks and Wildlife Service. It was a huge operation to pull together in a couple of days and undertake. I had teams of experienced volunteers who were off-track remote area hikers who've been helping us collect our research data as part of our community engagement. We had radio tracking collars on these koalas, so I had 2 tracking teams going out, walking off into the remote area to find these koalas. I had another team of people going out in a search and rescue mine, scouring the canopy to see if we could get more koalas out that we didn't have tags on. I got a specialist capture team up from the States to come and help catch the koalas. We had a 2-day window where the fire was approaching, but the conditions were good to go in and pull out some koalas and take them to the zoo. And it was a great thing to do. Everybody thought, well, at least we've saved something. And if all their habitat goes, at least we've got a good gene pool to start from as well. We took them to Taronga Zoo, who set up some enclosures for us. They had to be kept in a really special area because they were disease-free and didn't want any sort of cross-contamination. And then we had to feed them, which was a huge amount of work, and our volunteer army was amazing. We actually had 140 new volunteers sign up during the fires to help, and a lot of our core volunteers help with what we call browse collection, so the things that koalas eat, the leaves are called browse. We had to transport browse from around their home 2.5 hours to the zoo a few times a week to keep them fed. And the zoo pitched in with local browse as well from the Sydney area, which they ended up loving because it had a lot more moisture in it, and with the fires and the heat up here, it wasn't very palatable to them. So it was a massive operation. We were really delighted to get a dozen koalas out. That was all the zoo could hold, and browse was a really limiting factor, but it was really satisfying to do something. We had to keep them in the zoo for 3 months. Following the fires, we call it the apocalyptic summer here actually. Because we had drought to start with, then we had these massive fires, then we had floods, and then we had pestilence in the form of COVID-19. After the fires came these flooding rains, which sadly washed a lot of the ash beds, which are nutrient-rich, down into the waterways and contaminated them. But that same rain eventually helped restore the bush, and the canopy condition improved, so the food improved again in the burnt areas and in the unburnt areas. So we monitored that really closely to decide when we could put those koalas back. Immediately after the fires, our next major concern was trying to find and help any animals that had survived the fires and had been burned or injured by them. So we did a lot of search and rescue work, and that included using our detection dog Smudge and his hand Kim. We got out into the fire zones around the edges and at any point we could access, and used the dog to help find fresh koalas and look up to find koalas that were injured to take them to safety. The other really big threat was if these animals had survived the fire, they were now facing loss of food, so all their food sources had been burnt, and also dehydration from the drought. So this was before the floods had hit. So during that time, this is when our army of 140 volunteers came into play. We started designing, building and making water stations to get out in the bush for koalas, but also using them as a flagship species, and putting food and water resources out into wherever these koalas occurred to help multiple species. So we did 2 different types of water stations. Ones that we call arbora, we put up trees so that koalas and gliders and possums can access them. We don't want those animals having to come to ground for water, because one of the big threats here in Australia is invasive predators. So we've got foxes and feral cats that kill our native wildlife, and they can have a bit of a field day. When the fires have come through and there's no one to storage to protect our smaller animals, then the predators can do really well. We also put water on the ground for a bunch of species, including macropods like wallabies and kangaroos and wombats as well. And we put out pellets as food drops as well to give them a safe supply of food. So these fires really inspired a lot of people to action. We were really grateful to get a lot of support during this time. So we had never done this work before. We typically do research and then get that information out to make sure that wildlife conservation is really effective. Because of the extremity of this situation, we found ourselves doing animal welfare work, so search and rescue, food and water drops. We had no funding for any of this work, so we ran fundraising appeals, and we had overwhelming support. And even San Diego Zoo, our core partner in the US, raised a lot of funds for us as well to help during the fires and after. So after these flooding rains, fortunately the rains continued and the bush started to bounce back. So we looked at putting these rescued koalas back home. The fire had been stopped right in the middle of where we took them from, so they were in a low intensity burn zone, but there was also a patch of bush to the north that was unburnt. So we've been monitoring conditions there. We got out and did a bunch of surveys to make sure that they could survive if we put them back there, that there was enough food for them. To our delight, we've done pouch checks on the females when we caught them, and one of them didn't have a young when she went into the zoo, but she obviously already conceived, and so we took 12 koalas out and put 13 back, which was some really nice news. That then brought our final challenge, which has affected the rest of the world as well. COVID-19 was kicking in around that time. I had these plans to really stagger release to gradually put these koalas back and monitor them as we went. COVID-19 was hitting, the shutdowns were coming, and so having rushed to get these koalas out in front of the fire, we then had to rush to put them back before COVID-19 stopped us from doing so. We certainly didn't want them stuck in the zoo. One of the key risks there, although they were fit and healthy when they went in, they can lose condition and their ability to climb. They're used to climbing really big trees, and obviously they're much better if they get to select their own food. So we wanted to get them back out as soon as it was safe. And so we had this, again, a narrow window opportunity to get them out from the zoo and back up into Canangla Void where they belonged. So we had to get a hazardous tree assessor in as part of this work. One of the things that was really limiting people's access to the fire zones to help wildlife was the fact that it wasn't safe to go in. Trees often come down after fire. And so all of the make safe teams, as they're called, were out working around communities and trying to get people back on their feet. Again, there was nothing really available for wildlife. So I ended up hiring our own arborist who would go in front of our field teams and do hazardous tree assessments. So once we established safe access for our teams, then we were able to go and set up some temporary fences so that we could monitor the koalas for 24 hours and ensure that they could still climb and that they were eating okay, and put collars back on them so that we could radio track them. And now a big focus of our work is following these koalas in the wild in the burn zone to see how they survive and also which habitats they use, because we're getting signs of hope from these koalas that they are using the burn zones of different fire intensities, and by finding out where they prefer and the conditions under which they can survive, those are the places we can then go and look for more koalas. So our next steps after the fires are to do really broad scale surveys. We're trying to cover a huge area, probably about 500 surveys, to try and figure out where we've got these little pockets of hope, these little refuges where koalas have survived. It might be in the really steep valleys where the trees are huge and the fire just trickles through. It could be in certain habitat types, different slopes and aspects, or different tree species as well. So we're trying to find if there's any common characteristics that we can say, well, that's a fire refuge for koalas and other species. We need to try and protect that in the long term, because one of the really scary things about these fires is we can expect to see this again. You know, this is the first step under a change in climate. We're expecting more frequent and more intense fires. So we really need to change how we manage out of this. And the first thing we need to do is understand what we need to protect, if we can protect some core areas where things can recolonise from. One of the main really big concerns from these fires was the sheer scale of them. Normally fires are smaller, and so you've got a lot of patches and edges where animals could come in and recolonise from. That wasn't the case with these fires, so we need to ensure we can protect some refuge areas so that when fires come through again, those areas are protected and we have source populations that can recolonise as the habitats recover. Jumping, changing branches, leaving them out, so which is good for them, both good for. The other thing we're really having to focus on is we do have some surviving koalas from these populations where they went into the developed zone. So we've got a lot of koalas that were living in the national park, but they were also living around people's properties. And because that was an asset protection zone that was protected during the fires, that's where a lot of the surviving animals are. So those areas that are subject to development and land clearing and threats like vehicle collisions and domestic dog attacks, we need to really focus our resources down there to protect those animals, because they could well be the ones that recolonise these protected areas. Koalas sadly are really susceptible to fire, so they became a bit of an ambassador for the impact of these fires on wildlife here in Australia. Their response to fire is to climb higher in the tree. So they're not like a kangaroo or a wallaby where they can run away, or a wombat where they can go underground and might take shelter. Koalas are really susceptible to fire, and the fires we just have a lot of the time are what we call crowning fires. So they actually burn through the canopy of the trees. And that also means that over the long term, some of those really intensely burnt areas are going to take a very long time to recover. A lot of those trees are dead once the canopy is completely obliterated by fire. They don't necessarily bounce back. And so that's why they become the face of these fires, and why we've potentially lost so many koalas. And we're going to have to work really hard to see if we can get them to bounce back after a catastrophic event like this. So we've got two big jobs ahead of us now. It's going to be a long road to recovery from these fires. and that is finding the surviving animals in a protected area and working out how we can protect them and recover those populations long term, and really focusing more resources into those developed areas as well to protect the koalas that we have left. The other thing about koalas is they get a lot of moisture from the leaves. Normally they don't drink water unless it's a really bad heat wave. You might have seen famous photos of koalas drinking from a bottle. That's actually a really rare thing. Normally they get all the moisture they need from the foliage they eat, and so part of the work we're doing in terms of our surveys is trying to figure out which areas are going to be suitable under climate change, where koalas can still get the moisture they need to survive in the long term, so that we can make sure that these populations persist into the future. As part of the survey work we're going to be doing to try and find these surviving koalas, our detection dog team is going to be really important. So we've got Smudge at the moment, who's a coolie, who's fully trained and ready to deploy. We've also got Groot, my border collie pup, who's a year-old now, and in another 6 months he should be pretty ready to go. Groot started really early with his training at just a few months old. He has some really good talents and a good temperament, which is what he was selected for. He did a fetch at 8 weeks old, so he's very ball focused, which is the reward. And we're putting in a lot of training to get him up to speed to get him out in the bush and help him with his work as soon as possible. The dogs are really important because koalas in the blue mountains can be really hard to find. The forests are really tall and the canopy can be really thick. So you can't just walk through the bush and look up and hope to see a koala, which is why we focused on trying to find a poop or scat. So we use our detection dog teams to locate the scat, then we know the koalas are around, and we focus our search areas as well. So we're going to be using the dogs because they're far more effective at finding koalas that are in low densities. You know, we know that we've lost a lot of koalas, probably 1,000 koalas or more just in the Blue Mountains. And the dogs are going to be really important in helping us to find whatever is left, particularly in low density patches where there's not a lot of koalas around. So it's going to be a very long road to recovery after these fires, and we're just not resourced for it at this point in time. Training a dog, for example, takes about $20,000 just to get a dog up to speed and ready to work. We've got, apart from trying to blitz these surveys out in the next 12 months and cover as many sites as we can all in one hit, we then want to do long-term monitoring, because if we find koalas and we put some management actions in place, we need to make sure that they're effective and that these populations are recovering and not declining. So it's going to be a long road and a lot of work, and we really appreciate any support we can get with your help. Thank you.
Mission accomplished.
Okay, Kellie, thank you very much for sharing that incredible story of yours, full of amazing challenges and also a lot of hope, which is really heartwarming. We've got some time for questions for Kellie. So if you have a question, put your hand up, and I'm going to come around with the mic so that everybody listening in online can also hear your questions. And if you're online, also you can type a question into the chat and we'll read it out. Yeah, Chris?
What are the constraints in transferring the animals from one big place to another?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that. That was a fun. Was that about how we restrain them?
When you transfer animals from one place to another, can they survive in a different environment quite easily?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one thing we were really worried about. So obviously it was balancing out the risk of them perishing in the fire versus the stress on the animals of moving them to a totally new environment. So we had to ship them all the way from 1,100 metres in Canangara down to the zoo. They weren't sedated. We put them in little pet carriers, and koalas seem to travel quite well that way. But I was particularly worried about whether they'd transition to the browse well or not. So we were actually trucking that browse down several times a week to make sure that they had access to their own diet. But that was really heat stressed, horrible browse. So they actually transitioned really well onto Sydney plantation stuff that the zoo was doing a lot of collection for as well. But yeah, we kept a really close eye on them. There was vets at Taronga that were keeping an eye on them and reporting back to us. There were signs of stress for the first few days. Even when animals or koalas, including, come into care, you know, injured or sick or something, it takes them 2 to 3 days to settle into care. So often they won't eat for that period of time. And then after that, you know, they'll pick up and go normal, and you can count their scats and check their body score and do a whole bunch of monitoring as, you know, as non-invasive as possible to keep an eye on them. So they did stay pretty well once they'd settled in. And the main concern was getting them out as quickly as we could so that they'd keep that climbing fitness, and also to get them back on that diet. They can have changes in their gut microbiome, which is really important for being able to digest different eucalypt species. And that's why we made sure they had a good choice of their home diet at all times. And actually, once we'd had that rain and the canopy bounce back, they did transition back onto more of their normal food from Canangra before we put them back from the zoo. But yeah, it was quite an ordeal, and I was only relieved once we put them back, essentially. I wasn't relieved once we pulled them out from the fire front. It was once they were back home and doing well.
Kellie, any other questions?
Hi, Kellie. Thank you so much. That was a great video. Just wondering, how did you coordinate and manage 140 volunteers?
Yeah, another good question. Didn't sleep much. No, look, and some of those volunteers were really good. I actually had two helping me to organise the others. So I had volunteer coordinators, one in particular, Ariane, who came in, and so I do training days with the volunteers. So it was very systematic, basically set up and advertised training days at different sites, took certain numbers of people, teaching them how to build those water stations and maintain them. And then deployed those through a sort of a calendar system. We mapped it all the water stations were spaced apart 500 metres across 3 sites, and we trained volunteers at each of the 3 regions. And then sent them out and set up apps and stuff where they could sign in, say which water or food drop they were maintaining, what condition it was in, if it needed repair, and make sure that we rostered people around on at least a weekly basis so that the water was maintained and kept clean. So yeah, it was a pretty massive task, but it went pretty well considering. I don't think we probably didn't utilise all 140. We already had probably 200 on our books as well in different regions. So we had a lot of people very keen to help. Not everybody was able to get out to some of these stations because a lot of them were in remote areas. We put them on fire trails because communities were doing, you know, a lot of work around homes and that sort of thing. So we focused out in the national park system where we could get access out on the remote fire trails. And so, you know, it was limited a bit by vehicle access and transport and that sort of thing. But yeah, we had an amazing team. Everybody was really dedicated, and the browse collection as well, you know, that was taken on by volunteers largely. We had someone out there who could pick the tree species, so we had an ecologist at all times. But you know, loading the vehicles up, sending essentially truckloads several times a week was a big job, and that was really volunteer based as well. Though amazing.
Thanks, Kellie. I think we've got time for one more question. Yep.
Hi, you mentioned that you need our support. You know, you're now reaching out for support. In what way can agencies, educators and community support you? Do you intend to expand your volunteer programs or local community koala watch or anything like that? So yeah, let us know how we can help you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, we do have more volunteer opportunities coming up. At the moment, we've got scat surveys going out, and we are taking volunteers out on those surveys to help Fossick through the leaf litter. We're going to, after a couple of sites, we'll be swapping over to detection dogs. Like the main thing is, like, it's going to be a really long road. We want to be able to monitor these populations over time once we've mapped them. Don't just want to go out there and, you know, see if they're there now. You probably, like out along Bell's Line Road in some areas, it looks like some of those trees are not going to recover. So even though there's a lot of epicormic growth out there at the moment, and the koalas do seem to like that, some of those trees are still going to die. And so we really want to make sure that we're monitoring longer term. We're a registered charity, and all donations over $2 are tax deductible. So what our major need is really funding to keep that going. But yeah, absolutely spreading the word. One of the things we want to do is really get community awareness up in the developed areas around the asset protection zones where we know we've got those koalas surviving as well. So we're developing materials at the moment. And once we've got our survey results back, we'll be translating that science into community materials as well, so to show people where there's koalas, if they're living in a koala hotspot, to identify areas that are important for corridors and connectivity as well, based on where koalas have survived, the size of those patches, the genetic diversity and the disease status as well. So we really want end users to the research as well. So agencies in particular, we're really keen to work with to get that information out, to start habitat restoration for the koalas as well. So there's a whole range of activities in terms of helping us get the word out for education, helping us to recruit more volunteers and to recruit landowners as well who are in important areas. We might need restoration work there as well. And then always funding, as everybody knows, it's pretty tight in the wildlife conservation area. So a whole range of things.
Okay, thanks very much, Kelly. Let's just thank Kelly one more time for that story.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
And now we're going to move to another iconic species, the platypus. And I'm going to introduce Sue Martin, who's with us in the room. Sue is an environmental educator and she's the chair of Cattai Hills Environment Network, known as CHEN. And I'm also going to introduce at the same time Michelle Ryan, who is somewhere in there, and she is an aquatic ecologist and lecturer at Western Sydney Uni and has worked a lot with CHEN on eDNA for finding platypus. So here we go,